Two Apache sisters were given to me as slaves. I did the unthinkable. The story begins in a time when life was not easy for many people. It was a period of tension, fear, and constant change. Different groups of people did not always trust each other. There were misunderstandings, and sometimes these misunderstandings turned into conflict. The main character was living in such a time. He was not a powerful leader or a famous person. He was an ordinary individual trying to survive and take care of his responsibilities. His days were usually simple. He worked hard, followed the rules of his community, and tried to build a stable life. He believed in discipline, respect, and order. Like many others around him, he accepted the way society worked, even when it was not perfect. One day, everything changed. News spread that there had been conflict nearby. The air felt heavy with uncertainty. People were talking in low voices, sharing updates and rumors. In such times, life could shift very quickly. What seemed normal in the morning could feel different by evening. The main character did not expect that this day would bring something that would change his life in ways he could not imagine. As part of the events connected to the conflict, two young Apache sisters were brought into his home. They were not there by choice. They had lost their freedom due to the ongoing situation around them. When they arrived, the house felt different. It was no longer just a place of daily routine. It became a space filled with new emotions and silent questions. The sisters were young, and their eyes showed both fear and strength. They did not speak the same language as the main character, which made communication difficult. Silence filled the room more often than words. The main character felt many emotions at the same time. At first, he felt surprise. He had not planned for this responsibility. He also felt confusion because he did not fully understand how to respond. Society around him had certain expectations, and he had grown up with those expectations. People around him believed in following traditions without question, but deep inside, he felt something different. He noticed that the sisters were human beings with feelings just like him. They were not objects. They were individuals with thoughts, memories, and dreams. During the first few days, the sisters stayed quiet. They observed everything carefully. They tried to understand their new environment. The main character noticed how alert they were. Even when they appeared calm, their eyes were always watching. This made him realize that they were not weak. They had survived difficult experiences before arriving here. Their strength was visible in small ways. They stood straight, even when they felt afraid. They helped each other without being asked. Their bond as sisters was strong. The main character began to think deeply about the situation. He would sit alone in the evenings and reflect. The house was quiet during those moments. He wondered how the sisters felt. He imagined being in their place. This thought made him uncomfortable. He started to question whether simply following what others did was the right path for him. He believed in fairness, yet he was living in a system that did not always reflect fairness. This inner conflict slowly grew inside his heart. As time passed, small changes began to happen. The sisters started to understand a few words of his language. He also learned some gestures from them. Communication improved little by little. These small improvements helped reduce fear. When people cannot understand each other, fear often increases. But when understanding begins, even in small steps, trust can start to grow. The main character made sure they had enough food and a safe place to rest. He did not want them to feel constant fear. He believed that every person deserves basic kindness. The sisters were careful at first, but they began to notice something important. The main character did not treat them with harshness. He did not raise his voice unnecessarily. He did not show anger toward them. Instead, he spoke calmly. His tone was steady and respectful. This behavior surprised them. They had expected something different based on their experience of conflict. Slowly, their body language changed. They became less tense. They started to move more freely around the house. This period was not simple for anyone involved. The main character still felt pressure from society. Some people expected him to behave according to traditional rules. He knew that if he acted differently, others might question him. This created fear of judgment. However, his personal values began to become stronger than outside pressure. He realized that true character is tested during difficult moments. It is easy to follow others, but it is harder to follow one's own sense of right and wrong. During quiet moments, he observed the sisters carefully. He noticed their intelligence. They were quick learners. They understood situations even without full explanation. He saw that they helped each other with patience. When one felt worried, the other provided comfort. This reminded him of the importance of family bonds. Their relationship was something he respected deeply. As days turned into weeks, the atmosphere in the house slowly changed. It did not feel as heavy as before. There were still challenges, but there was also gradual understanding. The main character began to see them not as strangers, but as people with stories. He imagined their past life, their home, and the things they missed. This imagination helped him develop empathy. Empathy allowed him to connect with them on a human level. However, deep inside, he was still thinking about the future. He wondered what would happen next. He knew that life could not stay the same forever. The situation required a decision at some point. This realization made him feel both responsible and anxious. He did not want to act without careful thought. He wanted to make a choice that would reflect his true values, not just external pressure. The story in this first part focuses on change. It shows how an unexpected event can challenge a person's beliefs. It highlights the emotional journey of confusion, reflection, and gradual understanding. The main character did not yet take any final action, but his heart had already started to change. The experience of living with the two sisters opened his eyes to new thoughts. It made him question the system around him and his own role within it. By the end of this part, the foundation of transformation was already forming. What began as a normal life had turned into a moment of deep reflection. The presence of the two sisters was not just a change in his household. It was the beginning of an inner journey. He was no longer thinking only about survival. He was beginning to think about responsibility, humanity, and courage. This stage of the story sets the emotional base for everything that would follow. After the first days of confusion and silence, life in the house slowly began to settle into a new routine. The main character realized that if this situation was going to continue for some time, it would be better to create a peaceful environment. He understood that fear and tension would not help anyone, so he decided to focus on stability. Each morning, he made sure that the basic needs were taken care of. He wanted the house to feel safe and organized. The two sisters were still cautious, but they were also curious. They observed everything carefully. They watched how he spoke to others, how he worked, and how he handled daily tasks. Even though they did not fully understand his words, they understood his actions. Actions often speak louder than language. The sisters noticed that he treated them with a calm attitude. This helped reduce some of their fear. Slowly, they began to feel that not every person around them would cause harm. At the beginning, communication was very limited. Simple gestures were used to explain basic needs. Pointing, nodding, and small hand signals became common. Over time, this non-verbal communication became smoother. The main character also tried to learn a few words from their language. This effort was important. When one person tries to understand another culture, it shows respect. The sisters noticed this effort and felt slightly more comfortable. Living under the same roof required adjustment from everyone. The sisters had their own habits, and the main character had his. At first, small misunderstandings happened. Sometimes a task was not completed in the way expected. Sometimes timing was different. But instead of reacting with anger, the main character chose patience. He reminded himself that they were in a new place, far from what they knew. Learning takes time, and he wanted to give them that time. As days passed, small signs of trust began to appear. The sisters started to move around the house with less hesitation. They no longer stayed in one corner all the time. They began to sit closer during meals. Although they were still quiet, their expressions became softer. Trust does not grow in one day. It grows slowly through repeated experiences of safety. Every peaceful day added a small layer to that trust. The main character also noticed their intelligence. They quickly understood patterns. If he repeated an action, they learned from it. They were careful observers. This made him respect them even more. He realized that their abilities were strong, even though their situation had changed. This understanding shifted his perspective. He stopped thinking about them only in terms of the circumstances that brought them there. Instead, he began to see them as capable individuals. One evening, while sitting outside, he thought deeply about responsibility. He asked himself what kind of person he wanted to be. Was he going to simply follow what others expected, or was he going to make decisions based on his own moral beliefs? This question stayed in his mind. The presence of the sisters had changed his daily life. but it had also changed his thoughts. He felt that this experience was teaching him something important. The sisters, meanwhile, were also going through their own emotional journey. They missed their home. They missed their familiar surroundings. Sometimes they looked at the distance with quiet expressions. The main character could see this sadness in their eyes. He did not fully know their story, but he could sense their longing. This awareness increased his empathy. He began to understand that freedom and comfort are not small things. They are deeply connected to a person's happiness. During this time, small moments of kindness made a big difference. When one sister felt unwell, he provided care. When they seemed worried, he spoke in a gentle tone. Even though they did not share a common language, kindness became the bridge between them. These simple actions slowly built mutual respect. The sisters began to understand that not every situation is the same. Some people may choose to act with compassion, even in difficult times. The household environment improved gradually. There was still an undercurrent of complexity, but daily life felt more balanced. The sisters started helping with small tasks voluntarily. They were not forced to do so. Instead, they chose to contribute. This willingness showed that trust had grown. When people feel safe, they often become more cooperative and open. The main character appreciated their effort and made sure to acknowledge it with gratitude, even if it was expressed through simple gestures. However, outside the house, society continued as before. Conversations among neighbors sometimes reached his ears. He knew that his situation might not be fully understood by others. Some people might expect strict adherence to tradition. This external pressure was always present in the background, but the main character decided not to let fear control his actions. He believed that personal values should guide decisions more than public opinion. One night, he had a long reflection about fairness. He thought about the sisters' future. He considered how they might feel if given a chance to choose their path. This thought did not leave his mind easily. He realized that trust had reached a level where deeper decisions could be considered. The experience of living together had changed him in ways he did not expect. It was no longer just about daily routine. It had become a matter of conscience. The sisters, although quiet, were aware of the change in atmosphere. They could feel that something was different in his behavior. He was not just following rules mechanically. He was thinking. He was reflecting. This change made them observe him with a new level of attention. They started to respond more openly, showing slight signs of comfort in their posture and expressions. This period of time was important because it built the foundation for future choices. Without this stage of understanding and trust, later actions would not have been possible. Relationships do not change instantly. They evolve through consistent behavior. The main character's patience created a stable environment. The sisters' gradual trust created emotional balance. Together, these changes transformed the house from a place of uncertainty into a place where understanding began to grow. By the end of this part, the connection between them was no longer defined only by the circumstances that brought them together. It was shaped by shared experiences, daily interactions, and mutual respect. The emotional distance had decreased. Though challenges still existed, there was now a foundation of communication and empathy. This stage prepared everyone for the next turning point in the story, where deeper decisions and stronger actions would soon follow. As time continued to pass, the main character began to feel a stronger inner change. The first days had been about adjustment. The second stage had been about understanding. Now, in this third stage, he started thinking more seriously about what was right and what was expected from him. The quiet moments in the house became more meaningful. Every small interaction with the sisters made him reflect deeper on his beliefs. He noticed that trust between them had grown. The sisters no longer looked at him with the same level of fear. They still remembered their past, but their daily life felt more stable. They understood that he did not treat them with harshness. This realization slowly changed their behavior. They were more relaxed while moving around the house. They spoke to each other more freely. Even though language was still a barrier, emotions were becoming easier to understand. The main character began to see something important. He realized that keeping them in this situation was not just about daily care. It was about responsibility. He understood that every action has meaning. He could continue life as it was, following tradition without question. Or he could think independently and decide based on his own sense of fairness. This thought stayed with him constantly. One evening after finishing his work, he sat alone and looked at the sky. The peaceful view made him think clearly. He asked himself what kind of future this situation would create. Would it bring peace to his heart, or would it create more confusion? He knew that real strength is not only physical. Real strength also includes moral courage. That type of courage is difficult because it often goes against popular opinion. Meanwhile, the sisters were also experiencing emotional growth. They had begun to understand that their environment was not dangerous. They felt safer than before. This safety allowed them to think about their own future. They started showing small signs of confidence. They helped each other plan daily routines. They spoke softly but with more expression. Their personalities began to show again, not just their fear. The main character observed these changes carefully. He felt respect for their resilience. Despite everything that had happened, they continued to stay strong. This impressed him deeply. He started to question whether holding on to old expectations was the right path. He realized that sometimes traditions can create pressure that prevents kindness. He did not want to act only because society expected him to do so. During this period, he faced an internal struggle. Part of him feared what others might say if they noticed his changing thoughts. People around him might not understand his decisions. Social judgment can be powerful. It can influence behavior, even when someone knows what feels right inside. But he reminded himself that living with regret would be worse than facing temporary criticism. The sisters, although quiet, sensed that something was shifting. They could see that he was thinking differently. His actions remained calm, but his expression sometimes showed deep reflection. They did not know exactly what he was considering, but they felt that his heart was not closed. This subtle understanding increased their trust even more. One day, an event happened that made the situation clearer in his mind. During a simple conversation with someone outside, he realized that rumors and opinions were spreading about his household. Although nothing harmful was happening, people were discussing the presence of the sisters. This reminded him that society was watching. The awareness made him uncomfortable, but it also strengthened his determination. He understood that if he truly believed in fairness, he needed to act according to that belief, not according to fear. Fear could control decisions, but courage could create positive change. He began to imagine a different outcome for the sisters. He thought about what freedom would mean for them. He wondered how they would feel if they were allowed to choose their own path. This thought was not easy. It required him to challenge long-standing ideas. Changing deeply rooted beliefs takes time and reflection. But the experience of living closely with the sisters had opened his eyes. He saw their humanity every day. He saw their intelligence, patience, and strength. These observations made it harder to ignore his inner voice. At the same time, he did not rush into any decision. He wanted to think carefully. He spent several nights reflecting quietly. He considered all possible outcomes. He thought about safety, responsibility, and fairness. He understood that any decision would affect not only the sisters but also himself. This awareness made the situation serious. During these reflections, he noticed that his feelings were no longer confusion. Instead, they were becoming clarity. The confusion from the beginning had slowly transformed into understanding. He realized that personal growth often comes from unexpected experiences. Without this situation, he might never have questioned his assumptions. The sisters continued to show maturity in their behavior. They did not demand anything. They did not create conflict. Instead, they responded with patience. This behavior influenced his decision-making process. Seeing their calm nature strengthened his belief that they deserved consideration and respect. One afternoon, while watching them interact with each other, he felt a strong emotional moment. Their bond as sisters reminded him of the importance of family connection. He understood that separation from family can create deep sadness. This understanding touched him deeply. It was at that moment that his inner resolve became stronger. He began to accept that doing something different from tradition does not mean doing something wrong. It can mean growth. It can mean progress in character. He felt that his responsibility was not only to society, but also to his conscience. This realization marked an important turning point in his journey. The environment around them continued to be peaceful. There was no immediate danger, and daily life was stable. This stability gave him the mental space to think clearly. Without pressure from urgent events, he could reflect carefully. The sisters' gradual trust and the calm atmosphere supported this process. By the end of this stage, the main character had moved from simple adjustment to deep internal transformation. He no longer saw the situation as temporary confusion. Instead, he saw it as an opportunity to act according to his values. The sisters' presence had influenced him in ways he never expected. They had helped him question old patterns and consider a different path. This part of the story shows the development of courage within his heart. It highlights the slow but meaningful shift from passive acceptance to thoughtful responsibility. The foundation of trust, reflection, and empathy was now strong. With this emotional strength, he was preparing himself for the next important step in the journey. As the days passed, the main character's thoughts became clearer and stronger. What once felt confusing now felt like a responsibility he could not ignore. He had spent many nights thinking about the sisters, their future, and his own conscience. The trust that had slowly grown in the house was no longer fragile. It had become real. The sisters were no longer living in constant fear, and the home felt calmer than before. This peaceful environment gave him the courage to think about a serious decision. He understood that continuing the situation without change would mean ignoring what his heart was telling him. He had always believed in doing what was right, but now he was being tested. It is easy to speak about fairness when life is simple. It is much harder to act on those beliefs when society may not fully agree. Still, he felt that true character is shown in difficult moments. He wanted to be someone who follows principles, not pressure. The sisters had also changed during this time. They were more confident in their movements. They spoke to each other with calm voices and seemed more relaxed in their daily tasks. They no longer looked around the house with constant worry. Their eyes showed more stability and less fear. This transformation was important. It showed that kindness and patience can slowly heal emotional wounds. One morning, the main character woke up with a strong feeling that the time for a decision was near. He did not feel rushed, but he felt ready. He believed that trust between them had reached a level where honesty could guide the next step. He spent that day observing the sisters carefully. He noticed their expressions, their cooperation, and their strength. He realized that they deserved a chance to live freely and choose their own path. That evening, he called them to sit with him. This was not something he had done before. Usually, communication was simple and based on daily needs, but now the atmosphere felt different. He spoke slowly and calmly. Even though language differences still existed, he used gestures and simple words to help them understand his message. His tone was steady, not strict. The sisters listened carefully, sensing that something important was being shared. He explained, in the best way he could, that he no longer wanted them to feel limited by their current situation. He made it clear that he respected them as individuals. He wanted them to understand that his earlier decisions were influenced by the time and circumstances, but now he had reached a different understanding. His words were simple, but his meaning was deep. He wanted them to know that their future should not be controlled by fear. The sisters were surprised. They looked at each other first, trying to understand fully what he was saying. Slowly, they realized that he was offering them something unexpected. Their expressions changed from confusion to cautious hope. They had not expected this level of consideration. In their experience, situations like this did not often change, but now they felt something new possibility. The main character continued speaking gently. He told them that he would allow them to decide what they wanted to do next. He would not force any direction. He wanted them to think carefully and choose their own path. This statement was not easy for him to make, but he believed it was necessary. It represented his personal growth and his commitment to fairness. After this conversation, silence filled the room. The sisters needed time to process everything. Their emotions were mixed. They felt gratitude, uncertainty, and hope all at once. Freedom was not something they had fully expected to receive so soon. They had grown used to their surroundings, yet the idea of returning to independence brought both excitement and nervousness. The main character gave them space to think. He did not pressure them for an immediate answer. He understood that important decisions require calm reflection. During this waiting period, he prepared quietly in case they chose to leave. He gathered supplies and ensured they would have what they needed for their journey. This preparation was not done with sadness, but with acceptance. The sisters spent time talking with each other. They discussed their memories, their goals, and their hopes. Being together gave them strength. They remembered their homeland and the people they knew. Although they had faced difficult experiences, they also realized they were stronger than before. The support they gave each other helped them feel ready to move forward. After careful discussion, they approached the main character. Their expressions showed determination. Through gestures and simple words, they communicated their decision. They were ready to return to their own path. They understood that life would not instantly become easy, but the chance to choose their future was important to them. When the main character heard their response, he felt a deep emotion inside. It was not regret. It was a sense of completion. He had done what he believed was right. He respected their choice fully. He promised to help them prepare for their journey. His support at that moment was sincere and calm. The final preparations were simple but meaningful. He provided them with necessary items and ensured they would be safe when they left. The atmosphere was peaceful. There was no conflict, only mutual respect. This moment showed how relationships can change over time through understanding and empathy. When the time came for them to depart, the sisters expressed their gratitude in their own way. Their eyes reflected appreciation and relief. The main character felt proud of the decision he had made. He knew that not everyone would understand his choice, but he felt confident in it. He had followed his conscience rather than fear. As they walked away, he stood quietly and watched them go. The experience had changed him permanently. He was no longer the same person he had been at the beginning of the story. Through this journey, he learned that true leadership is not about control. It is about wisdom, patience, and courage. It is about making decisions that reflect fairness, even when they are difficult. The house felt different after they left, but it was not empty in a negative way. It felt lighter. The journey had taught him lessons about humanity and responsibility. He understood that growth often comes from unexpected situations. The sisters' presence had helped him discover deeper values within himself. By the end of this part, the transformation was clear. What began as confusion had become understanding. What started as pressure had turned into moral strength. The main character had made a bold and thoughtful decision, one that showed respect and compassion. This stage of the story represents the power of reflection, courage, and doing what feels right, even when it requires bravery. After the sisters left, the house felt quiet in a different way. It was not the silence of fear or confusion anymore. It was a peaceful silence. The main character stood alone for a long time, thinking about everything that had happened. He remembered the first day when the sisters arrived. He remembered their worried faces and the tension in the air. He also remembered the slow changes, the small signs of trust, and the final decision. All of these moments came together in his mind like pieces of a long journey. In the days that followed, life slowly returned to a normal rhythm. However, it was not the same as before. The experience had changed him deeply. He noticed that he was more thoughtful in his daily actions. He spoke more carefully. He listened more closely to others. The time spent with the sisters had taught him patience. It had also taught him that every person deserves respect, no matter their background or situation. He often thought about the decision he made. Some people around him were surprised when they learned about it. A few questioned his choice, while others remained silent. But he did not feel regret. He believed that doing what is right is more important than gaining approval. Even if not everyone understood him, he knew in his heart that he had acted according to his values. This gave him inner peace. The sisters, after leaving, began a new chapter in their own lives. They carried their experiences with them. They had faced difficult times, but they also experienced kindness and fairness. This balance of experiences shaped their understanding of the world. They became stronger because of everything they went through. Their journey continued, and they moved forward with hope. For the main character, the memory of the sisters stayed with him, not as a burden but as a lesson. He realized that real change begins inside a person. No law or rule can force someone to become better. Growth happens when a person chooses to reflect and improve. That experience helped him grow emotionally and mentally. He understood more clearly the importance of empathy. In the weeks after their departure, he noticed small changes in himself. He became more open to listening to different opinions. He no longer judged situations quickly. Instead, he tried to understand them first. This new way of thinking helped him in other parts of his life as well. His relationships with others improved. People around him noticed that he had become calmer and more balanced. The story also changed the way he viewed responsibility. Before this experience, he believed responsibility was only about following rules and completing tasks. Now he understood that responsibility also means thinking about the impact of one's actions. It means considering how decisions affect other people. This understanding made him more careful in his choices. Sometimes he would sit quietly in the evening and reflect on the meaning of freedom. He realized that freedom is not just about physical movement. It is also about the ability to make decisions. When the sisters were given the choice to decide their future, that moment represented true freedom. It reminded him that everyone deserves the chance to choose their own direction in life. Over time, the story of what happened became a part of his personal history. It was not something he spoke about often, but it influenced his character. The experience helped him become more compassionate. It strengthened his belief that kindness is powerful. Even in challenging situations, a calm and respectful approach can create positive results. The community around him continued its normal life. However, some people began to notice that his actions reflected maturity. They saw that he handled situations with patience. Without needing to explain himself, his behavior showed his values. In this way, the impact of his decision spread quietly. It was not loud or dramatic, but it was meaningful. The sisters' journey also continued in their own way. They faced new challenges, but they carried the confidence gained during their time in his home. They knew that not all people act with harshness. They had seen kindness in action. That memory gave them strength when they needed it. Their bond as sisters remained strong, supporting them in the future. Looking back, the entire experience felt like a lesson in understanding and growth. It showed that people from different backgrounds can share moments of connection. It showed that fear can slowly turn into trust when patience is present. It also showed that courage is not always about physical strength. Sometimes courage is about choosing compassion over pressure. The main character realized that life often brings unexpected situations. These situations may seem difficult at first, but they can teach important lessons. If a person is willing to reflect, even challenges can become opportunities for growth. This belief became part of his thinking. He started seeing obstacles as chances to improve. Years later, when he thought about this chapter of his life, he felt gratitude. The experience had shaped his understanding of humanity. It had helped him discover inner strength. He understood that doing the right thing may not always be easy, but it brings lasting peace. This peace is more valuable than temporary approval. In the end, the story is not only about a decision. It is about transformation. It is about learning, reflecting, and growing. The main character's journey shows that change begins with a single thought. When he chose to question his assumptions, everything started to shift. That simple step led to a powerful outcome. The sisters' story and his story became connected through that period of time. Though their paths moved in different directions afterward, the impact of their shared experience remained. It influenced their lives in quiet but meaningful ways. Both sides gained strength, understanding, and new perspectives. This final part completes the journey. From confusion to reflection, from trust to freedom, the story shows how compassion can transform lives. The experience proved that even in challenging circumstances, humanity can shine. The main character ended this chapter not with regret, but with wisdom. And that wisdom stayed with him, guiding his future actions and reminding him that courage and kindness together can create real change.